Gokurakugai is a series made by Yuno Sato. It tells the story of Tao and her younger compadre Alma, help for hires in Japan's lawless paradise district, known as Gokurakugai. Gokurakugai's release follows the series' original concept, a 2021 shot named Gokurakugai Sanban Dori no Ken. Between the two, they are pretty much the same, aside from one major difference. The serialization leaned more into supernatural elements. The protagonists weren't just help for hires, they now also moonlight as demon or maga hunters. The inclusion of demons or maga into the story is a not insignificant point of contention with readers who are transitioning from the one-shot to the serialization. When I was first trying to learn more about Gokurakugai, one of the first comments I saw out in the wild was one praising the one-shot for being a hard-boiled crime drama, and then critiquing the serialization for being a generic Monster Hunter series. And while I do think that's a massive oversimplification of Gokurakugai's problems, I was like-mindedly disappointed with how the serialization turned out. At the time of my last video, maybe 15 chapters were out, and they just felt very lukewarm. Sanban Dori no Ken managed to do a lot in its single chapter, more than Gokurakugai had done up to that point. It's not like I was expecting Gokurakugai to have all of its cards laid out on the table straight away, but I do expect there to be a table. A lot of the things that I really liked about Sanban Dori no Ken, the characters, the atmosphere, the themes, they all just kind of vanished. Well, vanished is maybe the wrong word. They were heavily diluted. I'm not going to retread all the points, but I will give you an example. The characterization of Gokurakugai, the town itself. Gokurakugai, the area, takes heavy inspiration from Yokohama's Chinatown. A place that I have on good authority is pretty sketchy in some areas. It was a cop told me that. It's nonetheless a great place to visit, especially at night. The lights sort of pop on and ignite this massive fire in the heart of the district. The lights also becoming a kind of sanctuary to the dangers that could be lurking in the dark, narrow side streets that surround you. And this feeling is perfectly encapsulated in Sanban Dori no Ken's opening shot. It's set at night in one of the district's dark alleyways with a child beating up someone younger than her for stealing something. The next shot is the city in the daytime, where we see a dense, bustling district with men, women, children, and grannies going about their day, all for some reason eating buns. But I bet it's Pandaman. I do like Pandaman. Pandaman's nice. This shows that Gokurakugai in the light is a normal commercial district, but in the dark, who knows what could go on. I think this is a really compelling setup for the area. The serialization tells you that the city is dangerous because people go missing sometimes, while showing you the shot of the city in the middle of the day with no one around. It's just not as impactful. Sanban Dori no Ken isn't revolutionary storytelling, but there's groundwork to let your imagination run. Kid fights are pretty high on the messed up scale, and it's the first thing we see. Who knows what else could be happening in these alleyways? Being told people go missing just isn't as scary. People go missing all the time, it's pretty normal. People go missing from retirement homes. Are you saying that Gokurakugai is as dangerous as a retirement home? The teeth of the district have been filed down. You're told it's dangerous, you're told you could be a victim, instead of how the one-shot preys on your uncertainty of becoming one that I'm sure many people have felt when they're walking through a city at night. In short, a lot of the foundation that the one-shot set up just didn't really translate into the serialization. I can't overstate how good the one-shot is, so I implore you to go check it out. But it's been about a year now, maybe longer, since I talked about Gokurakugai last, and as I always intended to do, I'm going to revisit Gokurakugai and see if it got any better. I'm also going to leave the one-shot where it was, in the past. It was a great little experience, but I don't think it would be fair to continue to hold it above Gokurakugai like some kind of gilded, sacred text. So let's look at Gokurakugai and see, did it get any better? Yes, it does. I have a feeling it was always good. Who knows? Maybe I'm just a goofball. Gokurakugai is in this unfortunate position due to always drawing comparisons from its contemporaries. Tokyo Ghoul, Shiki CD, AOT, JJK, CSM. I mean, it does itself zero favors. There are shots where it's just like just look, that's just Chainsaw Man, that's just Denji. And its overall plot is very Tokyo Ghoul-esque. There's some group that threatens the survival of all of humanity. It's sometimes indistinguishable from humans, so it preys on the idea that this looming threat could be hiding anywhere. The protagonists themselves are half human, half whatever, so they can act between the arbiter of both the worlds, exploring philosophical questions like, what is morality in the pursuit of survival? Who determines who is worthy of life? And what's the correct way to live? Sorry, I just realized it's really close to the plot of Twilight, isn't it? Twilight's a shonen. And reading through Gokurakugai, the prevalence of "I've seen this all before" really does create a fog that stops you from seeing what it does really well. And I'm not talking about its art, that much is obvious. It's very stylish, the characters all look really good. Tao is, well, she's just amazing. I've actually got a story relating to her, but I'll tell it later though. It's pretty funny, I think it's funny anyway. So I want to show you something. Wait here, I'll be right back. How many times have you heard that? Don't worry, I will actually come back. Wait here. I'm back. So this is a bento box. It costs 397 yen, including Japan's ridiculous 10% consumer tax, which I hate. I just generally don't like paying taxes. You can get them at any convenience store, but I always get mine at the Lawson's that's just down the road. Inside it is 2 onigiri. One is mayonnaise, the other is salmon. It has a single tiny sausage, a cutlet, and a pickled radish, as well as a piece of fried chicken and some egg. Recently they've added a piece of squid to it, which I don't really like, so I always eat that first to get it over with. And to you, this is absolutely meaningless. But to me, I can't tell you how many times this thing has saved my ass. Whether I couldn't be bothered to do cooking, or I suddenly found myself without any food, I know that I can always go to the store and get one of these. Good days or bad, the convenience store remains convenient, and this remains edible. Gokurakugai would call this a status quo, something that's a constant staple in your life that, no matter what, will always be there. Gokurakugai doesn't cement the idea of a status quo to a single concept. As long as it holds some kind of weight and significance, it's a status quo. It can be as important as a loved one, as grand as your own self-value, or as innocuous as a plastic box filled with food of dubious quality. All of us hold value in things of our life that might seem strange to other people, but to us hold a deeper meaning. They're more than just things. They're integral building blocks to our lives. Always there when you need them. How would you feel if, say, a shop you frequented stopped selling your favourite candy? It would probably be quite shocking. What if you suddenly lost your sense of smell or your house burned down? That would probably be very shocking. Gokurakugai aims to explore what these status quos do for us, and what makes them special, and what could happen if you lose them. Would you internalize your grief and lash out at the world around you? Or would you try and move on and find a new way to live? The characters that Tao and Alma help are people who have had the foundations of their life completely upheaved, and are struggling to either move on or adapt to the change. At these points, Tao and Alma act more like therapists than mercenaries. And it's probably where Gokurakugai is at its best. For example, in Chapter 2, Tama and Al head to the graveyard for investigatory reasons, and run into a man paying his respects at one of the stones. The man, Isato, bizarrely uses a lit cigarette in lieu of an incense stick. The meaning of this action isn't immediately clear. Is it a form of mockery? Is he just lazy and forgot to buy the incense? It's nevertheless a weird thing to do, using something so closely associated with death as a way to honor someone's life. So there must be some kind of weight and significance to this action. Sato then proceeds to talk about how it's the smell of lit cigarettes that he finds comforting. He tells Tao and Alma about his life growing up with his abusive father, how he was forced to work and hand over all his earnings to his dad. But he managed to endure the brutality because he always had his grandfather with him, his status quo, who, in Isato's memory, is never seen without a cigarette. However, after his grandfather became bedridden with illness, Isato's father murders him. For Isato, having his grandfather taken from him leaves him guilt-ridden, unable to move on, making him wonder that if he wasn't around, would his grandfather still be alive? Coincidentally, Isato's father arrives on the scene, but he's been changed, transformed into a maga. He spouts off at Isato, telling him all the ways his life could have improved without that burden weighing him down. He could have gone to school, made more money, had more time to be free. He could have had a new, better life. But Isato didn't want that. Despite all of its blemishes, there were things he liked about his life before. For such a short story, there's a surprising amount of sincerity and depth. The irony isn't lost on me. Smoking most definitely contributed to his grandfather's poor health. Placing a cigarette at his grave is like honoring a guy who died falling off a bridge by, I don't know, going bungee jumping. But you can tell that the cigarette wasn't the focus. It's the aroma that Isato heavily associated with his grandfather. And it's never explicitly said. We learn all these things through associated imagery. As memory and smell are very tightly linked together, we can only imagine what kind of things Isato remembers when he smells something as strong as cigarette smoke. With one memory being particularly moving, the shots of a young Isato blowing bubbles, kind of mirroring his grandfather next to him. Isato's grandfather was an important status quo. Isato's story is showing what Gokurakugai has to say about things that make up your life, how the bad can be offset by the good, and how small indulgences are just part of something bigger. The bigger thing that Gokurakugai emphasizes is the importance of family. Everything in the story revolves around the idea of being part of some kind of community. The secret HQ that Tao and Alma go to get their MAGA contracts is called Home. Upon arriving, they do the classic call and response, pretty much typical of any Japanese household. Tadaima and Okairi. I'm back, and welcome home. At home, ready to greet them, is a lady and a big fluffy man dog, who give them big hugs and tell them how much they missed them. When they go to leave, the lady and the dog tell them to be careful, because apparently that reduces accidents. These two clearly care about them, and I don't have to explain what's going on. They're going home and Mum and the dog are happy to see them. Where's Dad? I don't know, but if you're very good this year, maybe he'll visit you on your birthday. Tao and Alma aren't the only ones who go to Home. There's also Nei, the scruffy-haired guy who likes money. There's a nurse, and there's also this other guy. Okay, so there aren't exactly a lot of characters at the moment, but there's enough to look at how the community interacts with each other. And it's what I would call light, familiar hostility. They bicker a lot and aggravate each other, but it's mostly for superficial reasons. You know, family arguments. And among all of that shouting, there is a sense that everyone just wants what's best for each other. They are all fractured, flawed people, but together they know the value of lifting each other's best qualities up, whether it's making sure they're eating correctly or helping each other overcome their limitations. This community is always striving to make sure that everyone can be the best version of themselves. All of these themes are heightened by juxtaposing the same ideas and dynamics in a darker, more dysfunctional way. The antagonist of Gokurakugai is a pretty boy named Yomi, whose goal is seemingly to try and create his own family comprised of human MAGA hybrids. By resurrecting the dead as MAGA, they have a chance to come back to life while still retaining their human forms. Most of the time they just turn into weird worms, but sometimes they come back as superpowered humans. He then offers them sanctuary with him, as human MAGA hybrids can't live normal lives. Yomi creates a problem, and then there's also conveniently the solution. They eat people, I forgot to mention that. It's just Tokyo Ghoul. Yomi's family is unusual. It's like a disturbing bastardization on the concept of a family. It seems to bring out and emphasize the worst qualities of its members. They're gluttonous, self-destructive, cruel, and harmful, and they all seem to resent each other's companionship. It makes sense, as they weren't brought together over any shared values, they were pieced together through control and manipulation. Yomi preys exclusively on the weak and insecure, as they're easy to indoctrinate. He admits quite plainly that his goal is to disrupt the status quo of people's lives, and then helps these damaged people. And by helps, I mean lets them continue their self-destructive behavior. We see this with Yomi's first meeting with Utsu. Her value as a person is tied very heavily to how people see her, and before joining Yomi's family, the people in her life cruelly dismissed her proclivity to self-exsanguinate as attention-seeking. This is a disturbing and awful way to live, and it's an equally awful way to die. When she comes back to the land of the living, Yomi offers his sympathy to her and asks her to join his family, where she can be happy and comfortable, something that she readily accepts. But his family is not a place to grow. Utsu doubles down on her status quo. She becomes more aggressive, more obsessive, and now fully believes that inflicting harm on others and herself is a viable way to maintain relationships. Yomi reveals himself at the worst point of someone's life, the end of it, and ushers them into their new status quo of wanton destruction. The members of his family are just evil caricatures of the worst person they can be. While some do reject his offer, like Kanatata or Alma, he is confident that they will eventually come round, as they really don't have a choice. But unlike Utsu, Alma had someone come and save him and give him a community and a healthy status quo. In a way, Tao and I guess Alma are just like Yomi. They find people at their absolute worst and usher them into their new life. But instead of one where they take revenge on the world that they feel wronged them, it's one where they can move past that point in their life and find a new status quo. I'm not saying that Gokurakugai is revolutionary storytelling. At its worst, it's just a hodgepodge of things you've seen a million times before. I don't like the manga. I think design-wise they look really dumb, especially with their little sticky-out ears. The story relies on the contrivance of Alma just stumbling onto someone who just happens to be pivotal to the plot more than once. And Alma and Tao's job as both troubleshooters and MAGA hunters feels unnecessary, as no matter what, they're just going to be fighting MAGA by the end of it. But it excels in its nuanced approach to character and storytelling. Gokurakugai has a lot to say about the building blocks of someone's life. How living can be both very tragic, but also very beautiful. How badly losing what you always felt you could fall back on can change you and your view of the world. But, with your family, you can weather any storm. They're the strongest support you can have, and even if they're gone, as long as you keep living life to the fullest, that support will always be there. But also, how easy it is to just fall deeper and deeper and lose yourself in the dark. But above all, I think it shows that if it's possible to find happiness in Gokurakugai, enjoy eating foods that you have to struggle to keep down, and love living in a cramped house that reeks of the stale smell of cigarettes, it might be possible for anywhere to be paradise. So I got a comment on my last video that was really funny. I thought it was funny anyway. I remember exactly where I was when I read it. I was in Sunshine City in Ikebukuro. I was getting ready to go to the aquarium, and I checked my YouTube app, and I got a comment that said, I agree with you, but why did you have to mention your cock? No one wants to hear about that. And I got really confused because I don't ever remember mentioning my cock in the video. And so I was sitting there, I was squatted on the floor in the middle of a shopping mall, sitting there thinking like, when did I mention that? And then I realized what I said was, Sister Tao makes my kokoro go doki doki. I say that in the video, and then so it turns out they just misunderstood. They thought I said cock when I said kokoro. That comment doesn't exist anymore. It got flagged as inappropriate. I guess YouTube does it automatically, and then you have 30 days to allow it on the video, and I didn't realize that, so that comment's gone. Don't misconstrue anything. I still stand by what I said in the last video. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be disappointed that it turned out so differently. I don't think it's that unreasonable to be like, well, shit, this is nothing like what you, I guess, said it was going to be like. Like, imagine if you went to a restaurant, you sampled the wine and you said, I'll have a bottle of this wine, and then the waiter comes back with a bucket of water and just pours a little bit of the wine you like in the bucket. It's like, well, it's still technically what you ordered, but it's mostly watered down though. So I think it's reasonable to be upset. But that being said, I don't really think I'm going to, I'll make any other videos about, how the thing is secretly really bad. it didn't make me feel good. There was a comment in one of the chapter breaks by Yuno Sato that said, "Oh, Gokurakugai's out now. Please judge it as its own thing." And I was like, "You're right. I should judge it as its own thing." So no promises, but I'll try and stay more positive, and I guess maybe not jump the gun so much. But yeah, I remember I watched a podcast not too long ago, and they said on there it's much cooler to find things that are good in things that are bad rather than find things that are bad in something that's good. So even though Gokurakugai isn't like it's not amazing, it's good, and that's okay. It's okay to just be good. It's okay. Never underestimate mediocrity. But yeah, that's it. I'm in this room, by the way, because I said all of this in that room where I filmed it, but then my audio just didn't record, so it's a few minutes of me just mouthing at nothing. Yeah. Do you like my Makima collection? There's more off camera. You can't see it. There's a lot more.